So, welcome to DC Conversations. I'm your host, Yoga Aditya, and today I am joined by Stefanie Zoche, who is one of the renowned photographers and artists from Germany, who is the co-author of the photo book Hybrid Modernism, Movie Theaters in South India, in which she, along with her partner Sabine Hobbits, has done extensive research in documenting about various theaters across the southern part of India. So let me start out by asking you about this thing. What actually intrigued you about documenting this photography? I mean, documenting the single screen theaters, especially in South India. I mean, what was the your point of interest?
Well, our work is very often about architecture and about what architecture tells about processes in a society. And for us, the movie theaters in South India, uh, most of the ones that we photographed were built after independence.
Okay.
And they reveal a particular attitude of Indian architects towards modernism.
Hmm.
Like there are they applied a kind of modernist language. Obviously, they got influenced from Western modernism, but also from Soviet modernism. If you take, for example, Saptagiri
Yeah, yeah.
cinema, and but they made something else out of it, because modernism has like the principle form follows function. So it is supposed that the facade corresponds to the interior, to the function of the interior. And whereas the movie theaters in India, they often are they have like a facade that is in front of just like a cube kind of shape.
Okay.
And the facade becomes like it is staging what is happening in the cinemas. So the architecture is like an invitation. It is quite kind of extravagant, and often it's the shapes that are very unusual, and they want to get attention from the people who walk by and who might be interested in going to the cinema. So it adds a very special atmosphere to going to the movies. And I think for us it's interesting. We consider it also a project that has a lot to do with post-colonialism. Like in the sense like Homi Bhabha was describing the third space, but he referred more in a sense to sociology. But we think like the third space, it says that colonized people use signifiers from the colonizers, and they subvert it into their own system.
Okay.
And Homi Bhabha wasn't applying it to architecture or things like that. But we think you can apply it
Yeah.
because what has happened in India, we have asked many architects, what would you call this style? And none of them could give us an answer. They just said, well, it doesn't have a name. So I think really what happened is that Indian architects used inspirations coming from other countries and made something new out of it.
I mean that's a really wonderful thing. I mean, I think you even termed it as hybrid modernism, right? The kind of
Yes.
architecture these theaters evoke. I mean, I'm also curious to know that what was the reason for the movie theaters in South India to emulate this architecture, and from where exactly did these theaters actually get inspired from?
I think they got inspired from Western modernism. I mean, there are cinemas for example, in the US and also in Scotland, Britain, that are a little bit similar. But they also got influenced by Soviet modernism.
Okay.
Um, you can, yeah, we would need to look at particular cinemas. But for example, I know there's a cinema in
Yeah.
Trivandrum that is. They told us that the same cinema exists in the US, but
Whoa.
we couldn't find it.
In your opinion, do you think that photography plays a pivotal role in preserving the changing elements of time, such as these single screen theaters or any of the abandoned buildings, for instance?
Definitely. I mean, while we were photographing it,
Wow.
I mean, like a year or two, 2 years later, we realized that already part of these cinemas have disappeared, and they were torn down because of they are in the middle of the old part of the city. So the ground, they have a lot of space around them for all the parking space. So in terms of it is lots that are very very high priced in the meantime. So many of the cinemas got torn down, and while we did the research, we found also many cinemas that already had been torn down. Like in Bangalore, there's a road that is called Cinema Road,
Cinema
and it
Road.
used to have like dozens of cinemas, and there were just a handful left. And yeah, so I think photography definitely plays an important role in preserving the knowledge about that
About
those
these theaters
cinemas
because
existed in two senses. There's a loss of identity.
identity,
It's
yes.
on one side, I think it is a very special thing happening in India that if you go to those older cinemas, or if you would have gone to a cinema anywhere in India like 30 years ago, people went to see the same movie 5 times, and they were joining the songs, and they I mean, I have spent many times in those old cinemas, and people were talking on the phone and doing all sorts of things. It was a social event to go to the movies. And this whole social thing is disappearing in the multiplexes. In the multiplexes, you just sit down and watch the video, watch the film.
Correct, correct.
And but what you said that you weren't aware of those single screen cinemas existing at that extent. I've heard that many times, and even from people who lived in a city like Chennai or Bangalore, they told me, I didn't know we have these cinemas, and the reason behind is really has to do with the middle class and lower class and upper class, because the old cinemas are in the old part of town, and I say the middle class people who go to see the exhibitions that we had like 5 exhibitions of the movie theaters in India. So the audience who goes there, it's not the same audience as the one that still is going to those single screen theaters.
Yes.
So in a way, for us, it was interesting that people were surprised that when they saw our exhibition that these cinema halls still existed in India.
And also, like, I wanted to know what was the one unique thing that you have observed from when you talk about the theatrical experience? What was the unique thing that you've observed in these single screen theaters as opposed to the theaters in, in foreign countries, for instance, like your home country, Germany?
Yeah, there are cinemas, for example, in Chennai, that have been screening for the last, I think, 30 years,
30 years.
only movies by NGR. So, and they came again and again and again. So they know them by heart. But like every 2 or 3 months, they have a new. They will screen an old film, but they like the fan clubs, they behave as if it was the first screening. So they decorate the cinema, and the fan clubs in India, I mean, they are just amazing. We don't have that. I mean, of course we have actors and actresses that are admired in other countries of the world, but we never have these fan clubs who come and decorate the cinemas and make all these events around it.
So, like, how did you actually discover about these theaters? Theaters.
We were
Yeah.
traveling for another art project in India, and but we always have our camera with us, and we were just photographing architectural situations in and around cities. And when we came back home, we looked through all these pictures we got, and then we found, oh, there are two really interesting cinemas. So we said, okay, we go back, and we started in Kerala. So we went to Trivandrum and told the taxi driver, please show us all the cinemas of this town. And the first cinema he took us to was the one that is now on the cover of the book. So we said, oh, yeah, wow, this is great. We are on a good journey. And yeah, then we ended up, first we traveled all around Kerala a lot on motorbikes, and we just went by chance and asked people, tell us where to find cinemas. And it took quite a while because, it's difficult to find them. But then we decided it uh, would make no sense just to only cover the cinemas in Kerala. So we continued, and we wanted to include all the South Indian states. So we made another journey to Tamil Nadu, another to Hyderabad and Karnataka, and so yeah, we ended up covering the whole South, but we worked together with a photographer, Kartik Subramanian,
That's
and who made a research for us because it became too much work, too much traffic also.
like, do you remember about any of the uniqueness that unique theaters, like you've talked about Saptagiri, for instance? Were there any other theaters that you found to be striking, especially in the city of Hyderabad?
Let me remember. Yeah, Saptagiri is quite striking because it is very clearly Soviet modernist influence, and the colors with the striking red and the light blue behind, they were just. I think it's one of the most beautiful cinemas. And then there is Pilot, and it when we came, it was under renovation, and it had just been repainted and was just before being reopened. And it was also a very intriguing um,
An
architecture.
intriguing experience,
Like,
yeah.
yeah, it's like I think it looks like from outer space kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
The Natraj is also Hyderabad.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
Natraj is also a special, a very beautiful one. Because Natraj is one of the few cinemas where the exterior and the interior really speak very much the same language.
Mm.
And it's a very, I hope it's still there.
I mean, as
It,
of now, they stopped running it. Like it's an abandoned property now.
oh, oh, oh. Yeah, well, that is very sad to hear, because um, it happens so often. I mean, same thing in Germany. We had many of those cinemas like 30 or 40 years ago. And but all the process of tearing down buildings and making new, more efficient buildings, this process in Germany has taken place earlier. And now the few cinemas of that time that are left over, we treat them like national heritage. So in a way, I very much would hope that our research could contribute something to making people aware that these are treasures still standing there.
They were a testament. They stood as a true testament for their time, but now they're like a faded memory. And the only way that people, youngsters like me, who are able to actually would see their glory is through your photographs. I mean, there was even one theater, I think you might not remember. Shanti was one of the theaters that you have photographed. I just also
Yeah.
wanted to a bit about hybrid modernism. Can you explain a bit about hybrid modernism?
Yes, hybrid, we wanted to express with the terminus hybrid that it is a modernism of its own. Like I said in the beginning of the interview, um, it is um, it's an own interpretation about, in my view. It's an interpretation of its own of what modernism is. I mean, it is using the possibilities of uh, concrete, reinforced concrete structures that give you the possibility to make quite unusual shapes that were not possible before that. And I think there's a very playful attitude uh, within those cinema buildings. I mean, they have like Pilot, for example, has a very unusual shape. And also the facade of Saptagiri would be difficult not to make in concrete. Yeah, and that's why we called it hybrid, because it's not a very strict view of modernism as it is in the West. For us, it was interesting to see that most of the Indian film production actually takes place in the south. Hyderabad is one of the biggest production centers in the world, and much bigger than in Mumbai. And yeah, and that was also the reason why we concentrated our research on the south. And also, another thing that I found very interesting was that the kind of movies that are produced, for example, in Kerala, is quite different from the kind of movies being produced in Tamil Nadu. Like in Kerala, you have much more kind of authors' films, and the subject matter has a lot to do uh, with the society and women's issues and so on. Whereas in Tamil Nadu, you have the gangster movies, and, and yeah, we learned a lot about it, which was we didn't know before.
I really thank you for taking your time out and for agreeing to this interview and actually taking your time in answering all these questions that
Yeah, thank you for
that
your interest.